Thank you, Senator Ayotte. Mr. Mandel, I do like the phrase continuous improvement. You do get that inbred in you in the private sector, certainly in the manufacturing setting. It is about continuous improvement. One thing I'd like to point out, though, too, is when you come here from the private sector, one thing you notice about government, the federal government particularly, is everything here is additive. You know, I mean, I get the point about having, you know, whether it's the GAO or the inspectors generals or IRA, some of these agencies or offices within departments and agencies that are really tasked with auditing and trying to make government more efficient, that they need to be resourced. But my problem is there's just there's no process, and again, that's another word that's, you know, music to my ears. There's no process for subtraction. You know, Mr. Holtz-Eakin, you mentioned the one in, I thought it was a 1 in 1 out rule. I'd love a 1 in 10 out rule, but I'd settle for 1 in 2 out rule. There's got to be a process of subtraction. There's got to be a process of continuous improvement. And I agree. If it's within the agencies, again, we've been trying to do this for decades. It hasn't worked. One of the first proposals I made, and trust me, it has not gotten traction, was a bicameral sunset committee, whose only task was, on a regular basis, rotating basis, go through a group of agencies over a number of years, and really the only task was subtraction, taking a look at the rules and regulations that were outdated or that were harmful, and either update them, streamline them, modernize them, or eliminate them. And I think that's the kind of process we have to start looking at. It is, you know, quite honestly disappointing. I know our leader, Leader McConnell, was with President Obama in the White House, and apparently President Obama said, you know, don't even consider regulatory reform, not interested in it. I hope that's not his real attitude. Certainly the bipartisanship of this committee, I've heard it. Senator Booker walked out and tapped me on the shoulder and said, boy, you know, we've got some real opportunities for some bipartisan agreements. Now, maybe not overall regulatory reform like a RAINS Act or Senator Portman's Permitting Act, but, you know, at least a rifle shot approach where we can take a look at the individual regulations and, like, again, on a bipartisan basis, hopefully with unanimous consent. If we do our job, and that was one of the aspirational goals I set out for this committee in our organizational business meeting, was, you know, in order to pass something in the Senate, we're going to need at least 6 Democrats. We've got 7 on this committee. If we can get all 7 Democrats, all 9 Republicans, I think we got 9, maybe it's only 8, whatever. If we can get us all in agreement, hopefully we can get some of these you know, marginal improvements, the continuous improvement. I'll take any step we can take, and we really got to direct that. But again, it is about getting the information. I know Senator Carper was definitely taken with your, we want knowledge, not ignorance. I did pull up one of my favorite quotes from Thomas Jefferson. He said, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. So this is about information. We are the perfect conduit, trust me. Every day, every member of Congress hears from constituents that come into our office with their tale of woe of a regulation that is doing great harm with their ability to improve, to grow, to create jobs. And yes, there are regulations that do great jobs in terms of, you know, we've dramatically increased environmental protections, dramatically increased or decreased the level of pollution. Those are good things. We all support that. But there's a point of diminishing returns. There really is. And I think in many cases, as like Senator Heitkamp was talking about too, is in our quest for a completely risk-free society, which also will never exist, never was, never will be, we have reached that point of diminishing returns, and I think the return on investment in terms of regulatory costs is dramatically diminishing, and I would say it's certainly overtaken the benefit. Mr. Holtz-Eakin, having been former CBO director, you're talking about a regulatory budget. I mean, I love the concept. Again, a lot of people have criticized the $1.8, $2 trillion regulatory burden. Again, these are projections. How could you come to agreement? How could you calculate that?
So at present, agencies self-report the compliance costs, the burdens they will impose. Those are not all-in economic measures of cost, and we shouldn't pretend they are, but they are something that the agencies do, and you could take those at face value, knowing that there's some multiple of them that is the actual economic cost, but just cap those, and you know, provide some uniformity to the process of delivering those. I think Ms. Katzen's right about OIRA. If you're going to put all the independent agencies in there and have a more systematic process of delivering the information for a budget, it'll have to be better staffed, and that's a fact people are going to have to understand. But you know, I don't want to hold out the congressional budget process as the model, since it's got all sorts of flaws. Mm-hmm. But the idea that you systematically collect the information, measure something, will give you the capacity to manage it is the appeal there, and it's the cumulative. You can add it all up. That's the other appeal.
Mr. Mandel, I certainly agree with you. I think a number of people made this comment that the review process has got to be outside the agencies. Does it also have to be outside government? I mean, you're talking about a Regulatory Improvement Commission. Would that commission or committee, would that be outside of government, just set up by government and, completely, pretty much independent until it makes its recommendations?
That's basically right. It would be modeled after the base closing commissions, okay, where you'd bring in distinguished people from the outside, with appointed by the president and leaders of the Congress, and they would be able to make their decisions, their proposals, independent of anything else. Presumably, though, since it has to go through Congress, they would be sensitive to the politics of the situation and what can be passed and what can't. Now, I have to make one point here, which is the Regulatory Improvement Commission can go on top of any of these other proposals. It is not, in fact, a substitute. It doesn't, anything, it could go on top of the regulatory budget. It could go on top of Senator Portman's proposal. It's about setting up a back channel and a place for complaints that everybody can use for any of these proposals.
Don't you think you would need improvement commissions? I mean, wouldn't we, literally need dozens of these things that are actually focused and they have experts in particular areas of the private sector?
I'm trying to sort of think of things that can actually get passed under the current situation, okay? So the nice thing about the base closing commissions is they were limited term. You pass them, they do the job, they disappear, and then if there's an idea that it was good, you go and do it again. And in today's situation, nobody really wants to sort of layer on another level of permanent bureaucracy. It sort of seems self-defeating, it seems ironic and paradoxical. So let's go ahead and we'll sort of set this up, see if it works, see if we're happy with what it does. It's kind of a small bite to build trust, and then go on from there. Like I said, it doesn't take the place of any of these other big picture things, but it has.
No, I mean, my point being is what we would do is I would, pick the low-hanging fruit. Let's find an area that really needs regulatory reform, something relatively simple. And let's get some experts in that particular area, set up an ad hoc commission, and have it operate and report back to, it's really what the concept was with the bicameral sunset committee, where, you do this on a revolving basis over a number of years. And I guess what I would like from the panel is think about that. What would be the best example? What would be the one area where we know we have expertise that's just crying for this type of commission to improve the regulatory environment outside of government that can come and report in, make recommendations?
I think that's an excellent idea, Senator. This can be structured that way, and you can set up a couple sort of parallel to each other, but it's controllable.
Okay, so think about that. Senator Carper.
I'm going to ask all of you, I guess one of you a specific question, then I'm going to ask all of you the last question.